Now, the governing All Progressives Congress is asking the Electoral Umpire, INEC, to probe allegations of overvoting, beavers compromise, and widespread violence in the just concluded governorship elections in Bauchi State. The party alleges that there were extensive cancellations in polling units where the APC candidate, former Air Vice Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, had massive support without cogent reasons. This, the party claims, gave undue advantage to the People's Democratic Party's candidate, Bala Mohammed. The party alleges that supposed thugs of the PDP chased away APC party agents, thumb-printed ballot papers without Beaver's accreditation in Al-Kaleri local government area, and threatened the returning officer to sign the result sheets at gunpoint. Well, joining us in the studio to deepen discussions on the governorship and state Houses of Assembly elections are Paul James, who is the Program Manager Election, Yaga Africa, and Dr. Sam Oguche, who is the Coordinator, Yaga Africa Center for Legislative Engagement. Gentlemen, glad to have you join me this morning. It's morning now. All right, let me start with you. That's Dr. Oguche, right?
Yes.
Let me start with you.
Paul.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let me start from where I stopped. The Bauchi elections. The ruling party is claiming that the returning officer was threatened at gunpoint in one particular local government, Al-Kaleri. Thugs of the PDP came chased away, the agents of the APC, and that the result eventually put forward was not, didn't depict the real, what the voters did, What do you make of this back and forth of when people lose, when they win, it says it's the wish of the people, the will of God, but when they lose, they cry foul?
Well, sadly, this is what has regaled most of the reports or the outcome that we're getting from the states following the Saturday, March 18 elections. But then it also calls for deeper reflection if across most of the state, not only Bauchi, people will be crying foul about the outcome of the elections. I mean, I know it might, for me, it might be too soon to begin to say people that are aggrieved should go to court. I think we need to begin to look deep, and especially around issues that have continued to bedevil the conduct of elections in Nigeria. I don't see why, after more than 20 years of democratic experiment, we're still grappling with how to conduct elections. The problems are now gradually moving away from conducting our elections at the polling unit to the results collation, because to a large extent, whether we like it or not, I think the election itself, the conduct of the process at the polling unit is getting better. So that is why we're seeing this desperation from politicians, this desperation from their foot soldiers to continue to cause this havoc in our electoral democracy. It is very sad that this is happening, especially for most of these states. When you begin to look at the margin of lead between the two candidates, or the differences in the outcome between the two candidates, of course, then you begin to think some of these concerns could be genuine concerns, and why there will be need to begin to look inward, to begin to look deeply to see where this is happening. Of course, the social media and even the electronic media spaces are washed with videos, images of political talks, cutting away ballot papers, hijacking election materials, abducting even election officials that we saw, on election day. Because at Yaga, we deployed to all the 28 states that conducted election. That's why I said I don't think it is enough that we should just be, this shouldn't just be wishful thinking that this happened and then we move quickly away to the next one. We need to go back in retrospect to begin to look at these issues. How did it happen? For Bauchi has been in the spotlight. This is not just the first time that Bauchi has been in the news. Throughout the election period, it has been a tug of war between the incumbent and also the candidate of the PDP. At some point, lives were lost during the electionary campaign, and then there were accusing fingers were pointed at each other. So I think this is the time to really go back and see who were the people behind this, because it is also not enough that we continue to lose lives, especially precious lives of innocent Nigerians, because we want to conduct elections in this country. So I think for me, I mean, the agencies of government, especially the institution of government that are responsible for ensuring we have a free and credible process, now begin to see how they will wield the big stick, especially on people that are causing these challenges in our electoral process.
What will be the big stick for them to wield? That's one. Two, is it the desperation of the politicians that is causing these, upheavals in our elections? Or the not handling affairs well by INEC? Or is it just the three?
Well, I think...
I'm asking him now.
Okay, thank you very much. The big stick is to, subject these culprits to the full force of the law. We have the Electoral Act and a whole part dedicated to electoral offenses. Now, what do you make of a situation where people commit electoral offenses and nothing happens? We have a lot of security personnel deployed for this election. Where were they when all these things were happening? You have a situation where security personnel will stand aloof, watch, unconcerned, and innocent citizens harassed, molested, intimidated, even hacked to death. It is actually disheartening. But what I would say is this, I put it at the doorsteps of the security agencies and INEC. Before the elections, these things were brought up. So nothing happened during the election that was new. These projections were made. These issues were raised. So when you have security agencies who were available, who were fully deployed, and these things still happened, then we must begin to hold them accountable too. What happened? Why would we have security personnel on ground, available, yet ugly things? This excessive militarization of the electoral process is worrisome. That people can no longer go out freely to exercise their franchise in a democracy that is over 2 decades, as Paul said, is actually disheartening. It's unheard of. So it's as if we are moving backwards in our democracy. So when you see issues happen like this, let us trace it. Security, what have you done? INEC, what did you do? When you see issues of declaration under duress, as it's been alleged now, then the Electoral Act also has a remedy.
You don't seem to be talking about the desperation of politicians.
Yes.
Are we taking that out?
Okay, no, we'll not take that. Let me address that now. When you want to lead in a democracy, it should be subjected to the will of the people. I want to lead. I want to govern. Who are you governing? The people. Why don't you allow the people to make a choice of who leads them? So when you see people, the electoral process being violent, when you see an individual injured, it means somebody is desperate somewhere. It means the politicians want to govern at all costs. And what does it signal? Selfish interest. It is not about governance.
About service any longer.
Yes. If it's about service, you want to serve me, I say no. So is it a big deal? But what we have is a situation where politicians say, okay, win at all costs. Once you are there, the next thing will go to court, which is actually regrettable. So I find it, as you said, desperation on the part of the politicians, and that has made them to compromise from various quarters. They've compromised the security agencies, compromised the electoral umpire to some extent, even the ad hoc staff. And that is why, if you look at what Yaga Africa did, the pre-election activities, the election manipulation risk index that was released, there is a call there that INEC should subject those who apply for ad hoc appointment to public scrutiny. so people know who is who. In fact, they should be subjected to series of, let me say, tests, competency tests. Their names are published. Those who have partisan backgrounds can be flagged. People can make comments and look, this, he cannot go in. This person is partisan. He belongs to this party. You can't deploy him as an ad hoc staff. So we have had instances where ad hoc staff have been seen to have compromised the process. So if these things are done, but these things were raised, in some quarters, some were dropped. Anyway, so but we are still thousands of miles behind.
Oguche talked about publishing the names of ad hoc staff so that if there is anything that is not in line or agree with the law, electoral law, you can flag it. And that brings me to the first issue that I discussed on air, and that was one of the contestants claiming that Ninaoti, the LP, is an LP. Is related to the LP candidate, and he says if it is not so, she should come and debunk that allegation. What's your sense of what she said, and then the selection or appointment process of getting people to serve as either returning officers or commissioners during these elections?
Well, whoever alleges must provide the proof. I think that is the point. That is the first place to start. But again, on the part of the commission, one thing that has not been clear that people have always questioned is the way and manner it manages the recruitment and deployment of ad hoc staff over the years. And then, I mean, it's the commission that has also opened up itself to this kind of public scrutiny. I don't think this should be, for me, a hard sell. We have seen democracies where, I mean, you don't hear any hues about appointment of ad hoc staff or even movement of electoral materials. We have heard or seen democracies where ad hoc staff will even take election materials to their homes, and then the following morning they take them to the polling units and nobody make noise about that. This is because of the trust deficit that we still are grappling with in the country. But having said that, the big concern with INEC, for instance, is how it manages the entire process. INEC got 4 years to plan for this election. I recall just after 2019 election, INEC announced the number of days that we had ahead of us until the 2023 elections. My anticipation was that as that process begins, the recruitment process for ad hoc staff also begins. As much as I know, they always also want to work with people from the NYSC, especially youth corps members. But then you also have, if you like, records of corps members that INEC had used over the years, where even for the sake of experience, if these corps members are available, you can always go back after they had passed all the competency tests that Dr. Oguche had mentioned. We should begin to move to the area where we could have this database of people that have been tested in their competence and also in their attitude towards the management of our electoral process. It's so much painful that every time we pass through an election, you begin to go back, and then by the time you begin to point where were the loopholes, every time INEC and how it manages the process will always come as even top on the list. If you recall, when the FCT election happened on February of 2021, one of the problems from that election, 2022, one of the challenges of that election was that even in the morning of the election, some of these ad hoc staff were replaced. So that is why I said that has to also be open to public scrutiny, because we also don't know how the commission manages this. Sometimes these ad hoc staff, even the way they are called up to come and engage the process, their training is questionable and all of that. Before this election, the commission had mentioned that it was going to retrain this ad hoc staff. When and how did it happen? Nobody knows up to this moment. There is no public knowledge or public information that I know out there about how INEC had managed or conducted this training. So that is why you begin to hear all sort of assumptions around recruitment, around the engagement of this ad hoc staff. What it did before this election was to open up a portal where people can go apply. Who had applied? How were they screened? what interest did they represent? Nobody knew. Of course, that is why everybody could assume that politicians and and their likes could have also made some submission to INEC, which INEC, of course, could have honored. Now, building on to that is also about even how they manage the process itself. We have seen instances or heard reports about adults have even aiding and abetting some of these ugly incidents has happened around our election. In the management of the election result management process, for instance, we are all witness to what happened for the presidential election. Sometimes even in the application of the electoral guidelines or electoral laws on election day at the polling unit, it becomes a problem. Sometimes they are there, they are overwhelmed. Observers will call us and will be like, oh, they had noticed this sort of infractions, and then adult staff are also the one allowing that to happen. Well, sometimes they are even confused and don't know how to manage this process, and we'll be calling on the observers to come and assist them, which for us will contravene what we are supposed to be doing as observers in the field, because our duty number one is to observe, to document, and to report, and not to interfere in any way in the process. So most times, because these processes are not opened, they are shrouded in some form of mystery that is yet to be understood by Nigerians. This kind of questions will be coming up.
Dr. Oguche, in Adamawa State, the election was declared inconclusive. What's your take on that?
Yes, inconclusiveness of elections is not longer new. And what I have seen in the trend...
talking about, are the reasons cogent enough? Did somebody, cause the inconclusiveness? Or was it a matter of the fact that, INEC couldn't help it? It had to be declared inconclusive.
INEC itself is under a lot of pressure. And if you look at the politics of Adamawa State, a sitting governor going for re-election and a strong opposition. So it has put INEC in a tight situation that it also needs space to breathe well. You cannot separate it from external forces. There are other factors that could be responsible for that declaration of inconclusiveness. And if you see, the PDP is already shouting that, look, we won this election. For me, if you want to look at it critically, the Constitution spells out clearly how a winner should emerge.
Yeah.
But by, a kind of subsidiary legislation, INEC, came up with guidelines. We saw that in previous elections. But even the Electoral Act now, it has some provisions in it, where you look at the margin of win.
Yes.
If what you have, the difference is substantial, and you juxtapose it with the number of collected PVCs within the area, then you can begin to think towards that direction. So if you look at Adamawa State, yes, if it is, what is even the difference now between the two major political parties? Is that this declaration worth it? Can the difference be obtained by the number of registered voters who are in possession of their PVCs?
Because one of the reasons was that some local governments are yet to be taken into consideration.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons. Okay. And then some other reasons could be that
there are wards where elections were not conducted.
Yes. And then the fact that either the number of votes cast either exceeded or was lower than those that had PVCs.
Yes, in that situation, you cannot disenfranchise that sizable number of voters. And don't forget, politicians go out, they set out to deliberately unleash mayhem in the strongholds of their opponents. In fact, when we take it from the pre-election period, PVC buyout, people ask, why do politicians buy out PVCs from areas they don't have, areas that are outside their stronghold? It's voter suppression. When they buy PVCs from there, votes coming from that area will ordinarily decline. Not because they want to have more votes, but to suppress votes coming from there. In the same way, so taking the Adamawa example now, it will be fair and just to give these voters who have not participated an opportunity to participate, especially if their number is such that can make substantial impact on the entire outlook. So I feel that it is fair. It is fair because what we do is find a way to exclude some people. That is what it has become a common feature of elections in Nigeria.
And almost always in the stronghold of the other party.
Yes. So, and if you look at history of inconclusive elections in Nigeria, it has always taken one pattern. And that pattern is, if it is declared inconclusive, it is the party in power in that state that emerges, regardless of how it was before that declaration of inconclusiveness. Because one, state machinery will be deployed to that small locality. It is no longer a statewide election. It is restricted to a particular place or particular places. So there is enough to cover for those places. Most of the time, violence, most of the time, they take over completely. In some cases, declarations are made by force. So, and as the slogan goes now, if you don't like it,
go to court.
Go to court.
All right. We'll put you on pause there. You're still watching the special coverage of Nigeria State Governorship and House of Assembly elections. There's more to come when we return. Don't go away. All right, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in Benue State has declared a candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia, as the winner of Saturday's governorship elections in the state. The returning officer, Professor Farouk Kuta, the Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Technology, Minna, who announced the results, said the APC candidate polled a total of 473,933 votes to defeat his closest rival, Mr. Titus Oba of the People's Democratic Party, who polled 223,913 votes. Declaring the result, the INEC Rec, Professor Kuta, said INEC is relying on the Electoral Act of Section 24(1) and the INEC guidelines.
Kuta, who is the Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Technology, Minna, Niger State, hereby certify that I am the returning officer for 2023 Benue State governorship election held on 18th day of March 2023. That Hyacinth Alia of APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. Signed this day, 20th of March 2023. Thank you. Let me quickly say that this formal declaration is hinged on the fact that we are relying on the Electoral Act, Section 24, subsection 1, and the electoral guidelines of the Independent Electoral Commission of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
All right, still with me in the studio here, Paul, James, and Sam Oguche. We were discussing, this issue of inconclusive elections and the things that could lead to it. You had some more ideas when we were discussing of said. Could you just start from where we concluded?
Well, I think for me, people, beyond the legality of the issue, people will also be looking at the moral angle to it. Because for the case of Adamawa, INEC declared the election inconclusive because the differences between the two candidates was just about 31,000. APC candidate currently polled 390,000, while the PDP candidate about 410,000. Now, the locations where elections were not conducted or cancelled, PVCs collected in those locations are about 39,000. If you look at the difference between these two candidates, 31,000, and then the places where PVCs were not collected, elections were not held or cancelled that had 39,000 PVCs, and then there are about 46 locations where these elections were not held or cancelled. So the commission thought it should go back to this location and conclude the process. But then the point to make here, or the point to note here, is that there are also other states that people are asking the questions. If this should be the situation for Adama, how about places like Kaduna, where the difference is just about 10,000? Or how about places like Ogun, where the difference is about 13,000 between the two major candidates? So,
but the question would then be, does what you explain now apply in those places where you have maybe that the areas that elections are not conducted could in any way either favor one side or the other in terms of PVCs or number of places not the votes were not concluded?
Exactly. So when people are raising eyebrows like this, is because of the inconsistencies you see in the application of the electoral laws or electoral guidelines by the commission. I mean, at the moment, I know just about the difference between the two candidates. I don't know how the commission will have arrived at announcing them the winners. I am sure people will go back to continue to review. In the case of Kaduna, I know there was complaints at some point by the PDP that what they were seeing online was different from what the commission had announced. And so even if you think about other states, that the commission had to go to poll the results it has from the online portal and use it as the basis for declaration. So against the manual input. So I am, so concerned that this is happening. For Kaduna, at some point, I know collation was suspended. They asked the officials, I think for Kudan local government, to go back and review the submission and compare with what they had on the online election results being portal. So I am guessing this is the complaints we'll be hearing after the elections, because where INEC failed, especially where INEC does a different thing in a state and another state, INEC also is doing a different thing, then you begin to hear this sort of concerns from the public.
All right, excuse me. 28 states where elections are being held, governorship elections. 15 states declared. About 18 or so, that's about 10 remaining, declared. Out of this, APC has won 15 states, losing maybe states they held before, like Cross River, for example, and Kano State, not Cross River to PDP, all right? Kano State, not to PDP, but to NNPP. PDP has won 3 states. Aside the ones they have. You have Oyo, was expected, and some other states. Did you expect what we're witnessing? What is your sense of how APC seems to be having a roller coaster?
Well, I can attribute it to the order of elections to some extent.
Okay.
You know, when the National Assembly was, I think sometime in 2018 or thereabout, they tried to reorder the electoral sequence in Nigeria, but it was resisted. I feel that the outcome that we are seeing from the governorship elections now has to do with the outcome of the presidential elections. That APC is gaining more ground in some of these states because of its success at the center. And if you see, some of these places too, the parties there, the ruling party, that is PDP in some cases, you know, has internal
wranglings.
Yes. So, and when a house is divided against itself, it's like the foundation is
it's shaky.
Shaky. I cannot stand. So, if you look at Kano, NNPP's emergence in Kano, in fact, Kano is the base. And if you look at the leader of the party, Kwankwaso has a lot of supporters in Kano
State.
So, ordinarily, you will expect that to happen. And it did not go outside the projections. The PVT, also the parallel vote tabulation of that was done by Young Africa. Okay. You know, the what came out is in line with what the PVT, you know, projected. So I think that is it. Then when you go to a state like Cross River, right?
Where APC lost.
Where APC...
No, Cross River APC
won.
It was Akwa Ibom.
Yes.
That APC lost. Akwa Ibom used to be...
Akwa Ibom
was PDP.
PDP, okay.
Yeah, it was PDP. But you know the governor moved from PDP to APC, right?
No.
Akwa Ibom. No. Akwa Ibom.
The former senator, Akpabio.
Okay.
People thought the Akpabio factor would play in Akwa Ibom and that APC could gain grounds, but it didn't play out like that.
Yes, Ayade is...
Akwa Ibom lost.
Akwa Ibom lost lost to APC.
No, Akwa Ibom is PDP. Uda Emmanuel is the governor
of Akwa Ibom.
Okay, sorry, we are talking of Cross River.
Cross River,
yes.
APC won.
Yeah, APC won in Cross River.
Cross River used to be PDP before Ayade came under APC.
Yes.
No, Ayade cross carpet to APC.
To APC, yes, that is what I'm saying.
Good.
So it used to be. In fact, APC has never won at the statewide election in that state. This is the first time APC is taking over that state.
In Cross
River. And you can attribute it to the governor's defection. And being the person in charge, it's not automatic, but he was able to at least pull his weight and get the state for the APC. So APC in that state is because the governor moved. In Kano, NNPP came on board because of Kwankwaso factor. And that is how it has. So if you look at some of the other states, where in Benue, for example, where APC won, you can see, even before the elections, the followership of the APC candidate
Father earlier
was massive. Was massive. So at the end of the day, it did not come as a surprise. Speaking in my personal capacity, it did not come to me as a surprise.
I think everybody, most of the people in Benue really supported Father earlier. They seem to love him so much. Right, international observer teams have started releasing their preliminary statements about the conduct of the governorship state assembly elections. The European Union Election Observation Mission to Nigeria says the election was marred by multiple cases of thuggery and voter intimidation, as well as vote buying. The chief observer said that there were reports of irregularities and electoral violence across the country. He said this limited the free expression of the will of the voters. The EU mission also observed that female politicians lacked the opportunity to compete within the party structure, let alone stand as candidates.
States, the abuse of incumbency gave an undue advantage to the party in power and limited the free expression of the will of the voter. Positively, voters in 15 out of 28 states benefited from professionally organized media debates, during which journalists questioned lead gubernatorial candidates on issues of local concern, while fact-checkers probed their responses for accuracy. It helped voters to make a better informed choice on election day, even if most incumbents rebuffed media offers. Unfortunately, attacks and harassment of journalists that occurred on the 25th of February went unprosecuted. I would hope that those who assault journalists, as well as those who perpetrated such attacks during this Saturday's polls, will be brought to justice.
A civil society election observation group ready to lead Africa has denounced the increased violence, tribal bigotry, and ethnic-centered struggles observed during the governorship and House of Assembly elections. The group, which monitored the elections through the help of their citizen observers in all geopolitical zones of the country, said violent incidents occurred in 8 states of the country in the governorship elections, an increase in the numbers observed during the presidential elections. They also acknowledged some significant positives in the process, like the emergence of some young candidates from the process.
It is with a heavy sense of disappointment mixed with a tinge of hope that we must now address the many failures in our processes, which have all but marred the credibility of the results, damaged the reputation of our electoral and security institutions, and further drastically reduced public trust in our political system. The presidential and National Assembly elections recorded violence in at least 16.21% across 6 states out of 36 states and Abuja. On Saturday, 25th March 2023, these incidents increased to 21.62% across 8 states, while Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, and Rivers appeared on the violence list of both elections. Ondo, Oyo, Ebonyi, Imo, and Delta states recorded fresh issues on Saturday. This is wrong, and we will not go into the next election cycle with this mentality. Violence has no place in our democratic process. In addition, thuggery, voter apathy, and low voter turnout trailed the postponed elections conducted on March 18 by Nigeria Independent National Electoral Commission for 993 State House, Assembly, and 28 governorship seats. During the elections, there were several videos, reports of thugs carrying out attacks to intimidate voters and suppress the voting process in some locations, particularly in Lagos, Nigeria's major economic nerve and home base of the president-elect.
The Justice Development and Peacemakers Center, JDPMC, has commended the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, over the outcome of the March 18, 2023 House of Assembly election in Osun State. The organization also lauds INEC for improving the process, especially with the functioning of the Bimodal Voters Accreditation System, BVAS, and the election security architecture across 30 local government areas in the state. General Coordinator of the group, Reverend Father Peter Akinkumi, said 106 election observers from the organization were deployed to 112 polling units across 97 wards in the 30 local government areas. He, however, said there is increased incident of vote buying compared to the presidential election.
Lower voter turnout was observed across the state compared to the February 25th Presidential and National Assembly election. The BVAS, which was used for accreditation of voters, was available in all polling units. It accredited voters within average of 10 seconds. All issues related to BVAS malfunctioning were resolved within reasonable time and did not affect voting. Special deployment of security were observed in places that experienced violence and disruption during the presidential election of February 25th. Instances, however, of eruption of violence were observed at Anoye, polling unit 4, Ward 7, Ifosan, polling unit 1 and 2 of Ward 3, all in Ilesha East local government areas. There, hoodlums disrupted election with sporadic gunshots in attempt to snatch ballot boxes. JDPMC considers the March 18, 2023 State Assembly election in Osun State to be a commendable improvement on the February 25th Presidential and National House of Assembly election, especially with the functioning of the BVAS and the election security architecture up till the end of voting.
Well, still with us here in the studio are Paul James and, of course, Dr. Sam Oguche. Well, your observers, let's just break down some of the things we've heard. So one said this is a repeat of same vote buying and violence. which, I don't know, the Naira swap they tried to stop, but didn't. Instead, people suffered all the way. So what's your sense of that, Sam?
Yes, vote buying has become a common feature of elections in Nigeria. In fact, if you look at the Naira rate design, people say, oh, this was intended or is intended to mitigate vote buying. But even before the elections, I said it, and a couple of other people said it too, that this could turn out to be a tool for vote buying, in the sense that there was no money anywhere. In fact, in the last 1 month, I don't think I have carried 1,000 naira.
That is true.
Now, a person who ordinarily would not have been bought with 5,000 naira would now be bought, or would then be bought with 1,000. And what happened? If you look at the trend of election, what happened was that politicians deployed two major approaches to vote buying. What I would call the prepaid model and the postpaid model. Prepaid model is cash for vote. In this case, you are giving money, you are going to vote, or other valuables, or it's on trust.
Okay.
You have been given, you vote, they trust that you vote. Then you have postpaid, which is vote for cash. You vote and bring evidence that you voted for a particular party. And then when that is done, you have a date with the agent or any person within the vicinity of the polling unit. And what happened was that we witnessed a situation where many people were taking pictures. In fact, party agents, as reports, we have reports about them. Party agents were strategically located to see the voting pattern. So vote buying was, a common feature. And why? Each time we talk of vote buying, I ask myself, why? It is only the living that talk about good governance. It is only the living that starts agitating for dividends of democracy. People are battling for survival. That is what I would call weaponization of poverty by the state. We have a report from somewhere in the northeast that people were being given 1,000 naira fabric and spaghetti to vote. So it tells you that, let me survive first. I can't be here today battling for survival. This is a country where people have devised various formulas for feeding because of the harsh economic realities. 101. 100. 010. Worst case scenario 000. So when you have this one, later Aguda will tell you it's a state of economic helplessness and it's a stage of torture. So when people are like this, you can't be telling them anything about democracy. Let's put good leaders. They want to survive.
Maslow's theory. The ladder.
Of need.
So that is it. So as we have seen, what happened even during the presidential elections, in some places they were using POS devices, collecting people's bank account, bank details, and transfers were, because we are trying to go cashless. And if you look at the governorship elections, I think somewhere in Kwara, EFCC apprehended some people.
65. They
so
apprehended 65 people or so.
Also, so it has become a problem. And that is why, if you see the situation people are in, politicians are happy about it.
So, in other words, what was meant to stop vote buying
became
enhanced it.
enhanced.
Because there was no money anywhere. People were thinking about surviving.
In fact, to even add to it, we had this, which we still have, this fuel scarcity. People are suffering. So you look at it, even the voter party we are talking about, oh, I suffered this during the presidential elections, I don't want to go through it again. I suffered this, especially with the dissatisfaction that people have generally about the presidential election.
So let's talk about that. The turnout, still on the observer basis, the turnout, which in most places have been declared low. Now we mind that because when the observer team said a repeat of same vote by end violence, then so one of the speakers, I think the observers too, said even the presence of security agents, which was supposed to act as a deterrent, did not, could not. Is it because they're not supposed to carry guns? Because, I mean, if thugs are coming with machetes and guns, if you're a policeman and you don't have a gun, would you stand?
I think it is far from it. It's an attitudinal problem. I have observed elections across Africa. I've seen places where security use guns, and I see how they have abused also their rights to use that, especially for instance in Uganda.
Okay.
I've observed election in Benin Republic where securities had gone, but they were very civil, very professional in the engagement. In our own case in Nigeria, sadly, these security personnel are in the pockets of people that want to unleash this mayhem on voters. And then connecting this to voter apathy, I think, to be honest, it will be unfair on a Nigerian voter to begin to equate this or talk about voters not engaging in the process.
Why?
Because for me, I see voter participation as from the point where a voter submits him or herself to register for the process. And if you go back to when this exercise started, this is an exercise that INEC said it registered 93 million voters, unprecedented anyway. Now, if you recall, at some point, INEC even had to extend the period of registration because of the interest people had in the election. We went into the presidential election. INEC told us it has distributed 87 million PVCs. Only about a quarter of people that had collected their PVCs were accounted for in the election. It wasn't as if people did not make attempt. There were, as far as I can tell, there were technical disenfranchisement on the part of INEC. For that election, the late commencement of polls could have caused some people to lose patience and leave polling units. For that election, the way and manner INEC applied the election guidelines could have also caused some people to have missed the opportunity to participate in the process. The aggressive manner in which politicians and their supporters also engaged the process, both for the presidential and for this election. What were the concerns from this election on March 18th? The major concerns in this election were voter suppression, ethnic profiling. It wasn't like people didn't make attempt to do that. From what happened on February 25th, people have the belief that their votes could actually count. There were a lot of upset that was caused in the February 25th election. A lot of godfathers were dislodged. And so if that could happen in a national election, think about a local election that is even closer to the people. People will already have organized ideas around how they could also remove the powers that be from government. I am not celebrating most of these returns we see from the state. I think they are Pyrrhic victories, if you want to.
But, you know, state elections are local.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
I am trying to build on that to say, even whilst these elections are local, if you begin to look at this election on a state-by-state basis, and you see the kind of mayhem that were unleashed on voters, do you want us to begin from Rivers State, for instance, where INEC officials were abducted in Ahoda West even before the election, or where it took more than 48 hours to even conclude the process in Rivers State, where people were not even allowed to go out because political thoughts were unleashed? Or you want us to talk about Delta State, where we have it on record Our observers counted more than 50 people, 50 political talks that were going from polling unit to polling unit, flogging party agents and observers, just to discourage voters from participating. Why are they doing this? Because for them, low participation is even to the advantage of politicians. That has been the modus operandi in the past. Where people don't participate is where they go to manipulate. Now, I don't know whether this is happening in cahoot with INEC officials, because at the moment you have to account for everybody using the beavers. We have seen places on record in this election where the usage of beavers was also bypassed. So that is why, you know, these are coordinated attempts. These are coordinated attacks on the fundamental rights of voters. So I don't think we should put it on voters that voters are not participating. If there has been any interest, voters have been pushed more than to the wall in Nigeria before we got to this election. And so a lot believe with what had happened in Ekiti and Osun that people are able to see returns from those elections on the eve of the election, not even, I mean, yeah, just the night after the election. By 10 p.m., results from Ekiti were all online. By 10 p.m. in Osun, similar thing. That was where people begin to have the belief that their votes would truly count, since they could see polling unit level results.
But Sam, can we say that the votes didn't count when you have people like Bagudu of Kebbi State removed? He didn't get to the Senate. People like Lalong, the DG of APC in Plateau State. People like, governors lost their elections, you know. And in Osun State, we had there, it's not all sad news. I mean, there was commendation for INEC.
Yes, you know, INEC generally, this one is an improvement. At least in terms
February
of
to the 5th.
Yes. Now, if you look at the general outlook of elections, yes, INEC has not done woefully, in the sense that, as you said, there are places where political gladiators, in quotes, were humbled. You cited Kebbi, Bagudu, and other, even in Benue, the governor, Otom, in Plateau, the Lalong, you know. So, votes, as Paul said, it's a gradual.
I think Oguche lost to
one of
Enugu State.
Enugu State.
Namani of PDP.
Namani lost.
PDP.
I saw one tweet. I don't know whether it belongs to him truly also.
That he's left PDP.
He's left PDP, and so that is another thing. So what it tells us is that the people can actually own the process. They can act by coming out to participate. And as Paul said,
all right, Sam, sorry,
okay.
I'll keep you on pause there. Let's take a break and get back. You're still watching our coverage, special one, of Nigeria state governorship and Houses of Assembly elections. There's more to come when we return. Stay with us. The People's Democratic Party in Ogun State and its governorship candidate, Ladi Adebutu, on Monday vowed to explore all legal means available to challenge the victory of Governor Dapo Abiodun. The party accused the police and military of providing virile cover for gun-wielding criminals to disrupt and burn ballot boxes in more than 100 polling units across the state during the Saturday's election. The chairman of the party, Sikirulahi Ogundele, while addressing stakeholders of the party during a post-election meeting in Abeokuta, said the governorship election in Ogun State is a rape on democracy. Ogundele, who spoke through his deputy, Kayode Bangboshe, expressed optimism that the independent INEC became a willing tool in the hands of APC. INEC on Sunday declared Governor Abiodun the winner of the election, scoring 276,298.
What have we done to deserve treatment like this? Are we not taxpayers? Do we not deserve to be treated right? Is this process not meant to be transparent and fair to all? Then we kept on begging INEC. Treat us fairly. In Kebbi, the winning margin was 45,000. Yet you called for a rerun. In Ogun State, the winning margin is 13,000. Yet you refuse the rerun. God shall judge them.
We are hereby calling on the National Chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, to reverse this clear manipulation, injustice, and rape of democracy by the returning officer in Ogun State by declaring the Ogun governorship election inconclusive and ordering a rerun in affected areas. We want to ensure our supporters and the people of Ogun State whose victory, celebration, and freedom have been displayed to be assured that we will do everything possible to right this injustice and it shall never stand.
Still in the studio here with me is James, Paul, James, and Sam Oguche. Gentlemen, let's still talk on, what you witnessed in the field as observers before we talk about some of this, what I just read. But before I go there, Yoche Ayu asked INEC to cancel results in 3 states. One is Nasarawa, Kebbi. He's calling it a rape on democracy, travesty of justice. Again, is it a question of you're losing, you can't be good losers, or a question of the reality of what they really think should have happened? Paul?
I think it's a combination of both, especially based on what we were seeing before some of these returns were finally made. At Yaga Africa, we also deployed the election result analysis dashboard, ERAD, and at some point when these results were streaming into the ERAD, we had a sense of where the election was going, and then at some point we saw, in fact, last night I thought Nasarawa was already gone to the other party until we woke up again this morning to the news of what happened. And I mean, the parties are within their rights to challenge whatever they feel the irregularities with the results collation or management process, especially where ordinarily they thought they will be making grounds or they are gaining grounds. So, I mean, I sincerely don't want to always be aligning myself with that thought of just go to the court and all of that. Like, what is worth doing is worth doing well. What were those issues? I mean, INEC need to start purging itself of these things. I don't think INEC should just be in a hurry every time to be making declarations. Even the art is clear that INEC can review some of this election, and within 7 days, INEC could make the declaration. In Enugu, while the declaration was not made, I saw it on TV. What happened was one of the INEC officials explained to the people the challenges or the concerns with the collation process and why they had to delay the process. If you recall, Professor Mahmood, what I thought he did and I thought was not professional during the last exercise when some of the parties cried foul to the collation that was happening, he just advised them to go to court. We shouldn't be doing that as far as I know. Like, there is a procedure for this. If people raise concern with the process, if it is possible to address those concerns at the point of the collation, then address them. Otherwise, within the time frame that the law provides.
But then, if INEC chairman knows that the concerns you're raising is just trying to filibuster, I mean, he may not have any choice but tell you to go to court. I mean, if the concerns you're raising, from what they have, it seems like you're just trying to...
except people are living in different worlds, how will he have known? What I thought happened for the national election was because you are dealing with a one constituency election. Returns are all made in Abuja. Abuja will want to wait until all results are polled together, then you begin to do the margin of lead, which I think we need to review. For instance, there is trust deficit issue that we need to deal with. There was also a commitment by INEC that INEC did not respect. For the presidential election, there were locations where, for the fault of INEC, people were disenfranchised.
Okay.
The beavers malfunctioned. And in those places, INEC told voters to come back the next day to conduct election. We did a sample of 1,500 polling units across the federation. And from our sample, there were 13 polling units where INEC had promised Nigerians that they were going to conduct election the following day, and they did not do that.
Why?
If you extrapolate, they didn't show up.
Okay.
The point I'm making is if you extrapolate this, of course, it's going to be in hundreds or in thousands of locations where INEC didn't conduct election, where ordinarily you expect INEC to go back the following day and conduct this election because they had made that commitment to Nigerians. But INEC waited until the end, and then they polled the total figures of this location. I think they were about 900,000, and they were not enough to have
We usually give INEC a flag. Could it be, I mean, nobody should be disenfranchised, but could it be that they don't have enough logistics or resources to go on ahead and come the next day and do this?
That's what I was trying to land on that point. Because what I think also that needs to be happening is communication management, especially in terms of crisis, on the part of the commission. I would prefer a situation where the commission is upfront. We need to manage expectations of Nigerians. Before the election, questions were asked, hard questions, whether the commission will be able to conduct election in all of the 176,646 polling units. The commission came to tell Nigerians at some point that it was not conducting election in 240 polling units where they had not assigned any voter. But you and I here know that Nigeria was also grappling with security threats. At Yaga Africa in December, we attempted to go recruit observers from polling unit level. There were communities that we could not access because of insecurity, that we know even for INEC may not be able to conduct election. Nobody throughout the crisis, this security crisis, I have not seen record anywhere, whether from the military, from police, from INEC, that identified these locations and why elections will not happen. For places where we know people were already in the IDP camps, there were special arrangements for them. Now, we raised concerns even in our report about a location in Shiruru local government of Niger State. If you go back to Yaga Africa's, I think, second or third pre-election report, we listed about locations in about 9 states that have those security challenges. Nothing from any quarters. The eve of the election, that same location was attacked in Niger State. So the point I'm making is sometimes, whether it is in our security mapping or information gathering that the challenge is, I don't know. But what I always see is that there is that constant rush to finish this and move on to the next one. Finish this and move on to the next one. Nigerians will know how to solve themselves. For every election cycle, that is what we keep seeing. When Bayelsa election happened in 2019, we had it on record that election was not conducted in 24% of polling units. Returns were made in some of these locations. Southern Ijo, that is the biggest in Bayelsa State, there was no election in 51% of polling units. Returns were made. We filed our reports because that's also what you do as observers. You file reports, and then what we thought also happened for INEC. I know how challenging Bayelsa is because that election was like my third election observation, gubernatorial election observation in Bayelsa. I know how challenging it could be.
I think that the water
terrain. Bayelsa is 70% water, and in Bayelsa they say he who controls the waters control the elections. If you understand what it means. So I mean, so there is always the rush because of the tense atmosphere, the challenges with terrain, for INEC to just move on to the next one. And that is what I constantly say with our election. For the presidential election, what I thought happened was an attempt by the commission to just take the box. We conducted an election on the day we say we are going to conduct election. Not necessarily minding every other challenge that will have come with conducting the election.
So that they'll be giving thumbs up for it. Because again, when they don't do that, the same Nigerians will flog them. You said you were going to do it today, you didn't do it. Anyway, we were discussing this earlier. I think one of the observers said that people should organize themselves and stop the thugs. And I am wondering, Sam, how do you stop thugs that come with machetes, come with guns or clubs? And I mean, is that feasible? Is that reasonable? I mean, what's your sense of that?
Well,
even in the field,
when you start hearing things like that, it's an indication of a failing state. You are now telling the people that your survival is in your hands. It's uncalled for. He can't. You see,
It wasn't from security agents.
yes.
It was from an observer.
Yes, I know. What I'm saying is, if we have security of lives and property in place, no observer will be saying that. It's because there is no, people have been left to cater for their security. Now, you see talks coming well.
Those are the cater for their lights and water.
Yes. You know, we were saying the other day, what is the impact of government? When you see people, if you go to Airport Road, Abuja here, everywhere you go, people have their private water sources, they drill boreholes, they create roads leading to their estates, they pay for their security. So what is the government? And during election, you see talks that are coming, many of them carry guns. How would an individual, once upon sighting them, people scamper safety?
Your life is
Your life. As I said earlier, you have to be alive to talk of democratic processes. People were killed during the election. So those ones, can they say what we are saying now? No. So when you say people should come out to protect themselves, it's just, I hear those things and laugh, because there is no way. People, upon seeing talks, the next thing is to run.
Scamper for safety.
Safety. They come, destroy, the videos are everywhere online, destroy ballot boxes, burn down some places, even abduct. So, in essence, it is the responsibility of the state to protect the citizens. Electoral process is not an exception. At all times, if you look at the constitution, it says security and welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government. So when this security is now given to the people, I begin to wonder, are we going back to the Stone Age when it was survival of the fittest? When right or when might was right? No.
Now, we've talked volumes about the problems, What do we begin to do? Let's talk about solutions, some of the solutions to some of these things. I mean, we've talked about it over time.
Oh.
But we can't stop talking. Somebody said all it takes for evil to thrive in the land is for good men to stop talking. But really, because I asked it was Otubere yesterday, I don't know what to say, whether to say we assume, but we know these flashpoints over elections. Why do those flashpoints incidents there still recur?
Well, I think it's the lack of the political will to do that, to nip those in the bud. What we try to do for every election is we come up with indicators that could lead to possible election day violence. And at every point, we engage with the security agencies. This is for us at Yaga that is even doing one level of observation. There are groups that have invested heavily in tracking election-related security. I go back to the Edo-Ondo election that happened in 2020. Yaga Africa had the report then that points to atmosphere of violence in 12 of the 18 local governments in Edo, 13 of the 18 local governments in Ondo before the election. You see things like recruitment of political talks, proliferation of small arms and light weapons, all of this in the build up to the election. You will gather this report and share with this security. Even for this election, in Yaga Africa's pre-election statement, we listed locations in Rivers State where we had gathered report about the build-up of arms and weapons. What did the security do? Osun 2022 that happened last year, it has to take constant engagement, almost like a one-on-one engagement with some people that are high-placed people in the security before some arrests were made. We had a parley with the DIG then, Johnson Babatunde Kokumo, where Samson Itodo is listed locations where we know that we thought people were causing havoc, and then somebody that was spearheading it. And that was when the police made the commitment, oh, that person, don't worry, he will be picked up. They picked the guy up, locked him up before the election. We heard after the election they released somebody, Enibaba, in a thug that also worked with the garage boys in Osun State. So like you said, it's not like they don't know this. Sometimes, sincerely, it's the will to act that is lacking. And I mean, I am not surprised that citizens are also encouraging others to mobilize around that, because if the state is failing in its duty, you can't fold your arms and wait for the thing to come get you. You also have to protect yourself. What was fundamental for citizens was protecting the sanctity of our elections. If the people that are there no longer care for democracy, people fought for this democracy some 30 years ago. Maybe if this is our own time to continue the fight, then perhaps we'll do it this way. Until we get a leader that will have that will, that political will to say enough is enough and stop all of this nonsense. We cannot be going to polling unit, for instance, with dogs to protect us. We cannot be going to polling unit with sticks. These are basic things that people do everywhere in the world. These are things people look forward to. I was in the Gambia for the election. I came back to Nigeria with some citizens of the Gambia that traveled from here to go and cast their vote. Even for this election, I know Nigerians that came into the country to come and exercise this fundamental right. And then you come to this because of some pittance that some people get from these politicians, they will not allow you to do this. If you think about the cost involved in doing this, if you think about the heavy investment people have done, for some of us it is so painful that it took more than 4 years to get to this level. Investment in voter education, investment in the push to have new electoral laws and all of that. And look at the outcome from this. The worst election by every standard.
Is it really the worst? In terms of, well, it depends on where you're looking at it for, because I was saying certain things happened in this election that we never thought could happen. In terms of upheavals, people being uprooted, you thought could win elections. But could it also be said that the fact that these miscreants like Doyodiri of Bayelsa, and even the President Jonathan said these people should be arrested and dealt with, could it be the fact that these people, it looks like they never get arrested and dealt with to serve as a lesson to whoever wants to perpetrate this dastardly act?
Yes, you see, what has happened, or what happens, is these miscreants are sponsored. Most of the time, I've seen an instance where people were arrested for electoral offenses, and the Attorney General of the state subsequently went and entered nolle prosequi for them. How do you explain that? They were arrested, facing prosecution. Then Attorney General went and entered nolle prosequi for those people. To tell you that the state has an interest, that they are agents of the state. So when you start having that, it tells you that, look, it's a signal to others that I can still do it and nothing will happen. I know INEC is already overwhelmed by the challenges of elections. And that is why unbundling INEC has become a necessity, to create a National Electoral Offenses Commission. Somebody did a research recently. Why is it that we have these laws, but we don't have notable convictions?
That's the point. We'll leave it at there because we don't have all the time. Why don't we have these laws, but we don't have notable convictions? We hope we'll get it right as we go on. Thank you, Paul James Obiaga, and thank you, Dr. Sam Oguche, for spending time with me on the program.